Well, welcome. It's the Gail and Keith show. We've had been missing for the last 3 weeks, and dynamic duo is straight in. Moderator Rich reporting for duty. Yes, and as I said, it's been 3 weeks, I think, since we last had a Gail and Keith show, and this week's show is going to be all about shoplifting in the USA mainly, and also in the UK. So I'm going to introduce my co host, Gail. Welcome to the show, Gail.
Hello, hang on a second. I'm just going to do a quick adjustment. I'm really sorry. Here we go. Brilliant. Good evening, dynamic duo.
So,
Okay.
so how have you been over the last 3 weeks, Gail? Have you been busy?
Yeah, I've been pretty busy with work. A lot of things I've needed to prepare. It's probably going to go a bit more. It's going to get a bit crazier in the next few weeks. But today I went out and I did some filming around London using the Osmo 3. Edited it in LumaFusion. So that'll go up in the next couple of days. So have a look at that, Keith, and see what you think.
Yes, I
We
will
were
do.
having we were having a chat about action cameras and cameras before the show, weren't we? So
Mm,
you can have a look at how it looks and what you think. It's a bit sticky. It's a bit difficult to play with the editing though. Even though it's got a neutral edit thing, it can be quite difficult to edit. So I edited it and then I put what's called a filmic LUT on. So you can tell me what you think of the LUT on it. The light,
I
it's a
will.
light table, isn't it?
Yes, I will
Mm.
do when it goes up. Welcome to the stream. I'm just putting that up. So, oh, did it all in capitals. Silly me. So, we've got three watching at present. So,
Mhm.
two people have come in and haven't said hello to us at the moment, Gail. But we'll get on about the subject. Oh, Southern Cross. Hello there, Southern Cross. And Cara. Hello,
Right,
Keith.
as well.
So, welcome both here. So, I'll just put that up. Hello, Keith from Cara. And Southern Cross is hello, Keith.
Capitals.
Yeah. No capitals, please, Keith. Yes, I know. Southern Cross says hello to us. So that's good. So we've got them both in. I hope you've missed us because we've been away, as I said, for 3 weeks and we're going to get on with the show. So
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to share the screen and we're going to talk about shoplifting. So I'm just going to put that one up, and it's from the New York Post. Why shoplifting is soaring across the USA and will only get worse. So it says there retail crime has been rising throughout the US for the past 5 years. But normally, shoplifting you associate with small time crooks or people who are hard up or who are going without food. But here it says that it's organised by criminal gangs now. The biggest increase over that period happened not during the pandemic, but in 2019. So the total losses from shoplifting surged to 61 billion, up from 50 billion the previous year. Although they had uh, a hiatus during the COVID, it's come back a lot stronger. So when you look at things like this, it is, it's disgusting, isn't it? Really. So, and
Yeah, it's
I'm just going to say hello to Vanessa Kitty because Vanessa's come in. Hello, Vanessa. So, what's your opinion then on this shoplifting, especially in the States? That I look at it and I think if it's been organised by organised criminals, that's going to be bad for the shops. As if they don't lose enough money already, they're going to lose more.
I think the worrying thing is about this is the fact that it's not about the need to steal anymore. People are not stealing for providing for their children. People are stealing just out of greed. And the problem is that if it continues, it's going to have an impact on, as well as over in America, it has increased over here as well. It's going to have an impact on the shops, prices going up. And I don't want to get to a point where I can't go into a store and pick out what I want. And I'm worried that if it continues, we are going to go back to a situation where Russia was in the 80s, with people waiting outside of shops. And even in the COVID, do you remember the COVID period where everybody had to wait outside shops to get in to do their shopping? Yeah, so Vanessa saying more high resolution cameras and video and face recognition will help find those performing the act. But the problem, Vanessa, is that in most parts of some parts of America, I don't know if it's all parts of America, it's been in a sense decriminalized. So if you look at it, it's become a misdemeanor and not a felony. And that's the problem, because the consequences of committing such a crime have been subsequently reduced. So people clearly don't care. Shoplifting is on the rise. Even in this area, it's becoming rife now, and security guards in stores are told not to challenge, just let them carry on. It's all insured. That's giving a free pass. I absolutely agree with you. And I think that it is a difficult one, because you're looking at most large cities are crime ridden because people from lowest crimes to the most severe. Yes, cesspools from the lowest crimes to the most severe. The problem is the question of consequence for your crime, and is punishment a good way to resolve the issue? Do we send more people to prisons, or do we have to start having a conversation where there are consequences? Keith, have you got any videos to share?
No, I haven't, but I believe you have,
Yeah.
Gail.
Okay.
So you said. So if you could put it up, I will show. Yeah, that was a good point there, where you said about what do you think. So as we go into this discussion, we will talk about punishment. And Southern Cross has just put up. As a retired policeman, 33 years, I can tell you that most everyday citizens find this new trend reprehensible. To Gail's point, no, it's not as widespread across the US as the media portrays. Ooh.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So let me get to, so that the media paints the picture. Hopefully you can hear this, Keith.
Hold on, it hasn't. Yes, okay then.
Let me play it. Got it?
A warning from the biggest retailer in the country. Walmart says it will be forced to raise prices or even close stores if the surge in shoplifting continues. The company's CEO cited a lax approach by prosecutors to shoplifting crimes, specifically organized retail theft.
KTLA's Chris Wolf live in Burbank with the details. Chris.
That's right, Micah and Cher. The Empire Shopping Center here in Burbank has everything, including Walmart and Target. Well, retail theft is a growing problem for both of those chains, and the fallout could impact honest customers who pay for the merchandise. These are not Santa's little helpers, but criminals helping themselves to as much clothing as they can possibly grab before leaving the store without paying. The LAPD says this is a case of organized retail theft occurring in early December. Just one example of a much larger problem plaguing retailers, including Giants Target and the nation's largest, Walmart. In fact, the Walmart CEO says that surging theft in his stores could lead to higher prices or store closures to make up for the losses.
Everything's gone up, gasoline and taxes and food.
It's called inventory shrink, and Target is reporting an expected total loss of more than $600 million this year. The National Retail Federation says organized retail crime was up nearly 27% in 2021, and executives believe a weak or lenient criminal justice system is a factor in many areas and communities. We reached out to the LA County District Attorney's Office for comment. Quote, "It is the law in the state of California to prosecute theft of goods valued at less than $950 as a misdemeanor and theft of goods over $950 as a felony. A misdemeanor can carry a sentence of up to 364 days in jail, and a felony theft can carry a sentence of 3 years. We prosecute theft each and every day. It is also important to note that Walmart has closed stores before DA Gascon was elected, and they are closing stores now. They are also closing stores in progressive prosecutor jurisdictions and in traditional prosecutor jurisdictions."
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Vanessa says they get relatively little time for murder. And Richard said, "When I once worked at Curry's, we had people on Black Friday or Boxing Day sales come in and just walk out with the TVs in the box still, and nobody noticed because they were so busy." So when you look at that, you know, as that report said, if it's below $950, it's not worth prosecuting, really. Over $950, it's a felony. But they were back in the days when it wasn't organised crime. It is organised crime now because, as you saw, there's not just one person, there's quite a few, and they get their hands full. And because they've got weapons, no one dare approach them. They just come in. I mean, it was like on the news here a couple of weeks ago. We saw the same thing in the co-ops, that people are just going in, taking what they can, and then going out. No prosecutions, no nothing. And I look, I mean, my belief is that they shouldn't go to prison, but they should be made to pay back everything that they stole. If they've sold it on, then they should wait for that company until the debt is paid.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you look at the way it's changed now, whereas, I mean, shoplifting's been going on for time, you know, it's been going on forever and ever and ever, and it's always gone on. And I think one of the most popular ways that people lifted in the UK was they used to put silver foil in plastic bags to prevent the cameras going, you know, prevent the beepers going off. But if you look at the Walmart and all of the thefts that are on the media, and this is something Southern Cross that maybe I'm sounding alarmist, but when I look at the media, the American media, and even here, people are quite blatant about it. It's more about the blatancy of things that are being stolen. I don't know what your thoughts are, Keith, about looking at the video. It's not like taking one item. It's like taking thousands and thousands of pounds worth of items.
Yeah, it is there. Definitely, Gail, that people, it's thousands, and it's costing every one of us a deal on the prices, because the prices go up. And this is the problem, that we're all paying for it. It's like insurance scams. We're all paying for it. So Vanessa says thieves should be in prison regardless. Murderers, rapists, and such should be given capital punishment. Yeah, I agree on that. And Richard or Cara said, just that, haha, we have an Iceland frozen bag and it's a silver foil lining inside, and they sell those bags for £1. Anyone can use it for theft. It's unreal.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, you know, but I don't know whether that foil inside is different to the silver foil. I don't know. But even in the UK, if you look at the consequence of crime for theft here, I think in order to get prosecuted for theft, you have to have committed a shoplifting of over £200. The
Yeah.
other thing is, the only other punishment is if you're a prolific shoplifter, you might get a criminal behaviour order. And then if you get a criminal behaviour order, if you breach that, you can be arrested and sent inside. But if you are somebody who thinks, well, actually, I'm only going to get sent inside for 4 weeks, so during that time, I'm going to get fed, watered, and just chill out for 4 weeks, then nobody really cares. So it seems to me it's a difficult one about how we make a decision about how we punish it.
Yeah. Because this is it. I mean, you put someone who's committed shoplifting for the first time or second time or maybe 9 times. They go, they're given a custodial sentence. They come out after that custodial sentence with more know-how, really, to become better criminals.
Right.
And so I look at it and I think we should be teaching them to integrate with society without having to steal. I can understand people stealing when they're hard up for food, but not the way it is done now. It's the criminal gangs. And what have we got here? Richard says, we did test it. I didn't steal just a test. It was the same material. We actually couldn't believe it. Laughs out loud. The price of Freddy's, however,
Freddo, it's a chocolate. It's a small
Yeah.
chocolate bar.
yeah. However, makes me think, are they worth stealing? Joke. No, they're not. But
They're expensive, like 60 or 70p. But this is the problem, I think, that people don't realise. And this is, I mean, maybe this is me being a bit sort of alarmist. I don't know, but I am really worried because I think, although it seems like it may not be all over the States and the media might be overhyping it, I really feel that perpetuates it even more. Whereas Walmart have closed a number of stores in Chicago, I
Yeah.
really feel if it doesn't change, we are going to get ourselves in a situation, and I'm scared for the kids.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen to them when they want to have stuff? There's going to be no shops for them to go into because they're going to have to line up outside, or something's going to be locked.
Yeah.
And
So
there's a couple more comments.
yeah, Vanessa's put down, I have been in situation in the past without food source, but I have never resorted to being a thief. Yeah. So yeah, I agree on that. And Richard's put, he's had to remortgage the shop, or whoever has had to remortgage twice due to inflation costs. Paul.
No, he's talking about his Freddo bar.
Is he? I didn't realise that.
Okay, so he's saying the trend is somewhat isolated to several cities governed by progressive, liberal-minded politicians who direct prosecutional policy. Yeah, it's a difficult one because if you even look at the Democrats and the Republicans in their response to dealing with crime, you might have a more judicial sort of let's lock them up, 3 strikes and you're out policy, in comparison to what is perceived to be the liberal way of doing things, which may be about not sending the sending the prisoner to prison, but trying to rehabilitate them in a thing. And Vanessa said these crimes are throughout most large cities, regardless of who the politicians in charge are. So that's interesting. So you're getting, I quite like these discussions because it gets those two views in, Keith. It's kind of like, but if the people who are watching, what do you think? How do you think people should be dealt with for these sorts of crime? And what do you think would be good methods that people could use to reduce this sort of crime? What sort of ideas does everybody have in relation to that?
Yes, because that is one of the points, isn't it? How do we deal with this crime rate? I don't think there is an answer because it runs back to how they're brought up, the gangs that they're getting nowadays, and basically, I think it's a lack of respect from the younger generation, Generation Z or whatever it's called, because they've never had. The parents have been restricted. They can't punish a child. They can't hit a child. I mean, I remember when I was young, my father, if we did anything wrong, he had a big leather belt. He
But
only
Keith, the
used
problem,
he only used it once, but it was there in case. So, just got Southern Cross says, like which Conservative city to be precise. So, and Richard has put down, if you want to read it, Gail, for me.
I think if someone steals to provide and is desperate, then we need to focus on why and change it. It is not almost possible, I know. Criminal gangs should be dealt with harsher. The
Yeah,
problem we
yeah.
have here is that it's not all to do with criminal gangs either. And what we do is we put ourselves into a view that most of the people that are committing this crime are male between the ages of 18 and 24. But that's not the case at all. If you look at, if you watch the videos and you look at the demographic, it's older people as well. So it's not just the 18 to 24. This is spread across mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers stealing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah,
they're not stealing little things. They're taking, there was one, I was watching one video and it was these two ladies in their 40s and they'd gone into a shop and they'd literally, I'm sure, had stolen the whole meat fridge, Keith. They were filling the boot up with no regard. It was just sheer greed. Sheer greed.
Yeah. So Vanessa's put on, they are no longer crimes. If you make a law or regulation, you will not prosecute until a certain level of crime. Yeah, I know. And we've got, because I said my father used to have a leather belt. Richard says, I got slapped with a bamboo stick by my granddad. Aha, that taught me a few lessons. Yeah, it does. It taught me a few lessons. I think I'll admit that when I was younger, I did steal Mars bars or a Bounty once out of
Kids.
the shop. Yeah, well, I was what, 5, 6, something like that, and I was in. I was with some older kids, and they really pushed me to do that. But that was many, many years ago. I would never think about shoplifting now. And Vanessa's put down, we have groups coming through the towns here, hijacking vehicles by beating up the occupants.
And
Yeah.
Southern Cross has also put a comment into Keith above.
Yeah. There we are then.
Okay, yeah. So he's saying, or she's saying, I don't know which gender, these organised gangs do not target areas where a rapid police response and traditional penalties would be assured. That's simply a fact. Right. Okay. Well, let's have a chat about this one because this really interests me in relation to police. Because if you look at police and responding to things, and you look at traditional police response, we have to look at police budgets as well. So police budgets over the last 20 or 30 years have been significantly reduced. So, and also because of that reduction in budget, you can't possibly have the level of response, because if you look at police response times, you can't simply have the level of response that you had in older times unless you resort to a model called intelligence-led policing or evidence-based policing, because in London, for example, you may have high crime areas and lower crime areas, and you can throw all the officers in the world at a problem, but there is a monetary implication with police. And I think one of the problems is that the police don't have the budgets that they had years ago.
Yeah,
I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, because when you look at the level of police, they got rid of no end of police here in my area. 10, 13 years ago. All right, they have said they are now recruiting, but they're still not spending the money that they used to do in the early 2000s because they haven't got it. And Vanessa says the town is one of the smallest in Connecticut, but has a high police presence on the local and state levels. We have the main international airport here. So, yeah, so as you said there about London, the cases in London, there isn't enough funding to go round. So police have got to prioritise where they use that money on what things. And this is the problem. But back to the shoplifting, it is organised now. It is not done by individuals. It is an organised crime. And in my opinion, when it's organised, then they should suffer. If they are caught, they should be given a lot stiffer penalties.
But then I guess in relation to Vanessa's point, the organised crime thefts are doing it as fast as possible. They do not care about the response times because they are in and out before any police arrive. So this is the problem. I think a lot of times we look at you can get a police car to arrive at a crime, and nothing is done. So the only other way you can get around this and target organised crime gangs is to do proactive intelligence-led policing, based on the fact that you're not going to get that organised gang, but what you do is you look at where those gangs are going and then do a proactive sting.
So Southern Cross has said, would you like to read that, Gail?
Not so here in the US. Reduction of funding for law enforcement has noticeably decreased in the progressive cities I've referenced. Much of this has been a direct result of the Black Lives Matter movement. So, I think that
excuse me.
In London, the way that law enforcement works in America is a little bit different as well to how it works here. So, and I think you know this, Keith, as well, that you might have in, say, for example, a city like San Diego, you might have 10 or 15 different police forces, whereas in London, you have the Metropolitan Police Force. Then you have the City of London Police, and that's it for London. You have the British Transport Police and a military police, but it's a different level of power. So I don't know if your police powers go through to the country. In the UK, if you were a police officer in England and Wales, your powers go all the way through England and Wales. But I don't know if you are an officer in the US, whether your powers would go across county lines or state lines, depending on whether you're work for the police department or the sheriff's department. It's quite confusing over there, I think, Keith.
Yeah. So Vanessa's put another comment in. We have drug houses found out north of me across the border from Connecticut, found directly related to drug crimes out of New York City.
Ooh. Yeah. Go on.
Using homes as a shell entity to make or grow drugs. Yes, we have that a lot here as well, don't we? Houses being used. I think locally they found a big cannabis factory, in a house. There's many, and I still say that a lot of this crime is down to drugs.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, if you look at, again, organised crime gangs in the UK, cannabis is normally, I think, there is an awful lot of Vietnamese people who are trafficked over to the UK, and I think it's similar in the US as well, where I think it's Vietnamese and Chinese people are trafficked and forced to grow drugs and things like that. But sorry, Keith, I disturbed you. What did you just say?
Well, I was just going to say that politicians and us here in the chat talking about this subject, but really, is there an answer to it? I just don't know. I look at the situations, like the cost of living. How many cost of living crises have we had throughout the centuries or throughout the last 100 years? It's boom and bust, boom and bust. It's the same with shoplifting, criminals. They say that they've reduced crime by 20, 25, 30%, but percentage means nothing. It's how many they're catching now. I read, while I've been looking at things just now, that the success rate of prosecutions is way down. So, even hardened criminals, there's no deterrent there at all.
Yeah. And there's things like, there's a quote, isn't there? There's lies, damn lies, and criminal statistics.
Yeah. So Vanessa's put on a rise in assaults here on our older population and disabled people of late. Carjacking assaults, people beating on older people who are just out for walks. Well, we're easy targets. The old are easy targets. And Southern Cross has put, if you want to read that statement.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's always interesting to find out. So he says state police officers have statewide jurisdiction. So county officers have country officers have country jurisdiction, city officers citywide. All police officers in the US have nationwide authority to carry concealed weapons. So the looks like it's interesting. Citywide, all police officers in the US, so they can conceal carry. And then they've got country officers who have country jurisdiction. So in the police in the UK, officers in England and Wales, including volunteer constables, have jurisdiction in England and Wales. So they have all of the arrest powers and things like that.
What, even the special?
Special constable have the powers all over, because they have to do. They have to swear in. So they have to do their attestation or something like that. That's interesting then. So any US officer can act upon felonies in any jurisdiction, but Southern Cross, if they can, what powers are they going to be using? Are they going to be using their own power? So, or are they going to be using a specific policing power? So, are they going to use a person power or a policing power? Because as regular people in the UK, if you see somebody committing an offence, you can act upon it, but it's only committing an offence. Whereas if you're an officer, it's about suspecting it, then it's different. Everyone should have countrywide carry, whether open or concealed. I don't like guns, Keith. Oh gosh, we're going to open up another argument, another debate. This is interesting.
I don't like the police force carrying guns, tasers I agree with, but not guns. I think that the gun laws in the US, when you look at how many killings there's been in schools and colleges and universities over there, but that's another conversation for another week.
But you know what's going to happen, Keith? This is quite a heated conversation, because you have to remember that Second Amendment. I think it's the second. No, that's freedom of speech. There is that right, right to protect yourself. And that is instilled in America, whereas it's not as instilled in the UK. But I still find it quite a scary subject.
It would scare me, because I mean, when you look what happened, I can't remember how many years ago, where that Brazilian was shot on
the train,
mistaken identity, wasn't it? I believe. So when you look at that, now I'm pleased most of our police force do not carry guns. So Vanessa's put down, soft targets rather than hardened, secure sites is a critical problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that
Yeah,
because
I would fully,
yeah,
definitely, but I still, we still haven't come up really with any answers, meaningful answers, so you can understand how the politicians must be thinking,
mhm,
uh, because they've got the responsibility to keep the public safe, uh, and they haven't got the finances like they used to have.
yeah,
Uh, uh, Tony's put down, being in background, the world is a dangerous place.
it sure is.
It sure is, Tony. Very, very much so. Um, I've no duty. So Vanessa's put down, police officers in the US have no duty to protect.
Oh, that's a weird one. I'm sure, but
Yeah.
that must be. But they must be liable to negligence though, because if they don't protect, and so if they don't do their duty, then surely they could be sued. So if they don't protect, so if you have a right to life, a person, you have to take responsibility because surely wasn't that what happened to who was the guy who was killed? Well, who was the guy who was alleged to have been killed by police officers in America the other 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
Mm, mm.
George Floyd, wasn't it? George
Yeah,
Floyd.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the police officers were sued or imprisoned
yeah.
because they didn't act, and they potentially could be sued. So yeah, that's interesting.
It is,
He's
isn't
doing a
it?
night flight.
Oh,
Tony is.
yeah.
Oh, our Supreme Court has determined that no duty to protect at least 3 times. That's strange. It's kind of
Strange, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. That's got me curious now, Keith. I like it when people put things like that in because
Yeah,
my
yeah,
brain's going now. My brain's
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah, I mean, 3 times they've determined that the police over there have got no duty to protect. So, what is their duty, Vanessa?
yeah,
You know,
because yeah, it's interesting though because it says to protect and serve. That's their mantra, isn't it? But
yeah,
then this is a contradiction because it says
yeah.
no duty to protect. That is
So,
weird.
yeah, so police can just watch, i.e., the school massacre by that murderer.
Oh, this is the Texas. Is this the Texas one, isn't it, or something that happened? Wow, that is so. I guess it's a weird one because you have a duty. You, they say protect. It's kind of weird. Oh, most police vehicles no. That's interesting. Well, I've learned something new today here, Keith. I
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
when we go international because it
yeah,
says
yeah.
most police vehicles no longer have protect and serve on their vehicles. Well, I didn't know
True.
that.
Yeah, I didn't. No, no. So it just shows you how policing methods have altered through
Yeah, yeah,
through the years. You know, I mean, it's like the UK police force, how much that's altered over
yeah,
the years, and that these are topics that we can discuss now on other shows, which
yeah,
I find. I mean, it's opened up an whole new case for us to for discussions to discuss and talk about and get
yeah,
people's opinions, because that's what this show is all about. It's all about getting your opinions, getting other people's opinions, and we Gail's got different opinions to me, and
yeah,
I've got different opinions to her, and that's what makes life interesting. But
yeah.
didn't know that.
And
So
that's interesting as well because it's sort of like I want to get my head in to the Supreme Court case because I think that would be really interesting to look at.
yeah, yeah.
How they came to that.
Mm.
Oh
So
wow.
Vanessa says, when a crime is being committed, even assault upon you, while the police watch them, the police do not have to intervene.
Wow.
Wow. Now that's scary. That really
Yeah.
scary. And that happened to me in Alaska, June of '83.
God.
Yeah. I mean, that is really scary, Vanessa, that they just stood there and watched while whatever was happening to you was happening.
It
That
just
is disgusting.
Well, it seems I'm going. It's piqued my curiosity. This has, because I'm sitting here going, how does that work? How the heck do you call yourself a police officer? And so, what are you actually doing then?
Mm.
That's the
Yeah,
thing, because
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense to me. Because it's like, well, if you don't uphold the law, what are you actually doing? Or is there an argument then? Are we saying there's an argument for not having a police
yeah,
force
yeah,
or a
yeah,
police service, which is something that came up, I guess the liberal commentators would say. Remember the defunding of the police and all that sort of stuff
yeah,
that
yeah,
was going around in America, and that sort of went a bit awry, didn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Gosh, Tony's put a girl was raped near place my last works, but police would not respond. Oh my goodness me.
Yeah. And Southern Cross has put, I can try to clear this up.
Okay.
And Vanessa's put, the Anchorage police officers were walking across the ground as I was being physically assaulted by 3 men near the cliff edge, just off the airport in Anchorage. They were walking across the ground as I was being physically assaulted.
It seems
It's disgusting.
this is getting my brain going now. I'm going to have to get me. So this is something we can have a look at then. We can have a look at officer prosecutions. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? What officers have been prosecuted on, and whether we can look at neglect of duty and things like that, or interesting cases. I mean, we could do the Wayne Couzens one. I think that might be a good conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can do that next week if you want, Gail.
Yeah.
If you want to, carry on this conversation next week.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it started with shoplifting, and now it's got on to other things, other topics. So,
well, that's fine, because it's good that it segues in, but we can go back to the top. We can go back to the top and say, obviously shoplifting has increased, and we have to revisit because somebody said there's been a significant rise in drugs, and the drugs they're producing, like crack, is now going on to fentanyl. And obviously you had the painkiller thing in America. So people have gotten addicted to opioids as well as fentanyl. So it's interesting.
So Vanessa's put down, most gun crimes here, when being prosecuted, are dropped by the attorney prosecuting, even though the crimes are felonies. Yeah, just cannot understand it.
Well, I think it's probably because the wheels of justice turn slowly. And if you are a district attorney, how many cases have you got? And actually, can you actually solve them all? And if you can't, then your hands are tied.
And this is the problem, that there aren't enough prosecutors. There's not enough funds in the system in this country as well as in the US. Well, I think it's a problem throughout the Western world, because you look at what happens in France. They get away with all these protests. The law just stands around and doesn't seem to do anything. It's like here in the UK with rebellion, extinct rebellion, and stop oil, all the things they do, and you very rarely hear of major prosecutions. So unless it's put, barbiturates, amphetamines, narcotics have always been illegal drugs of choice in this world, at least during my 62 years of existence. Yeah,
Mm.
they are. Yeah. Southern Cross has put, if you'd like to read that, Gail,
Yeah.
for me.
People often get caught up in the semantics of the concept. Supreme Court rulings in the US have consistently addressed the obligation of police to protect the public as a whole, not the individual. But it's still an interesting concept because I'll bring up the other concept of duty of care. Because protecting the public as a whole, you are looking at the public in general. But if you think about the concept of an officer responding to a call in relation to a specific individual, then who are you protecting and what is your duty of care? Try to understand that police work is not imperfect. There is no guaranteed positive outcome of a police response. Absolutely. I think that there isn't sometimes there isn't a positive outcome to a police response. However, I think that a police interacting with the public can have a significant impact in the way that the public interact with police in the future. I don't know what your view of that is, Keith.
Yeah. That's it. The public have got to work with the police,
Yes.
because if they don't, the police get nowhere. And
Yeah.
this is the problem, that a lot of the public are afraid to work with the police, because if these criminals know you are working with the police, then you're a target, and a
Yeah.
real target, and the way the world is, it's a very dangerous world. So
Yeah.
you're never going to get an answer to the problem.
No, absolutely not.
because people now, they've got no respect for anything.
I agree.
And I'm not just saying youngsters, even people of my age,
Yeah.
and everything like that. So Vanessa's put down, a lack of response or action is a problem for the police, etc. Yes, I agree with that, Vanessa, but it's also a lack of response from the public, because
Yeah.
people don't go over and help somebody in distress now. I mean, I've noticed in the last 10 years or so, if somebody falls down in the main street, nobody really goes over and helps them. They just stand there and watch. They get the phones out, and that's it. And it's like, I watched a program, what must be last year, when you had someone stealing a mountain bike in a city centre, and people just stood there and watched.
Yeah.
And this is the problem, because people are that scared of getting involved. So the last few comments from Vanessa: UE, the schooling, federal and local police.
Well, don't you,
What happened? Yeah.
And then Southern Cross has said people will still be hurt and killed despite police response. Well, yeah, as again, it's sort of like we'll go back to the beginning again. How do you solve the problem of shoplifting? And if you ask a room of people, they will come up with different answers and different responses. And if we look at the concept of how do police become more effective in their response, we're going to have different responses from different parts of the community. So we live in an imperfect world, Keith, right? Is that correct? Would you say we live in this imperfect world?
Yes, we do.
And I think it is difficult to come up with a solution for how to improve the police, and also what's the public duty as well. you have a duty of care to yourself and to others. But has that somewhat diminished? I still believe, again, and I have to believe this, that the majority of people are very good individuals, and there are very lots of people who are very honest and very decent. And I think, again, it's a small minority who spoil it for the rest of us. I don't know what your view is, Keith.
Yeah, it is. It's a small minority. And we'll just take this comment from Southern Cross. If there was no problems, police officers would be liable to lawsuits. No one would ever become an officer with the peril of losing all you hold dear at stake. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah,
fully.
I absolutely agree that if you are doing a job and you are using powers which you are depriving people of their liberty, I think that you need to be responsible about how you use those powers. Because if you use those powers unlawfully, or you're brutal with members of the public, then you should be held to account. However, you should be afforded protection when you are doing your job and you are assaulted. And I think that if you are doing your job and you're assaulted and you are using force and you're using reasonable force, then I'm of the view that that if you've done your job with due diligence, then you've done your job properly. And I think it's a difficult conversation that a lot of officers, and it's a very difficult place, because a lot of officers are entering a world of the unknown. They don't know what they're going to go to on a daily basis.
Yeah.
They are working very long shifts and they're very frustrated. But I do feel that it is an officer's duty to learn their job, to learn what their powers are and use them appropriately in the circumstances. Because if you do that, then I think that you will be afforded all the protection you can. Unfortunately, as in the UK, the cases in the UK, we had an officer called Wayne Couzens who took it upon himself to kidnap, rape, and murder a female. And he had been a police officer for 8 years, and he was a bad apple. And unfortunately, those bad apple officers have an impact on the hardworking officers who are trying really hard to improve, do a job because they're passionate about. And Southern Cross said he'd been a police officer for 33 years. So clearly passionate about that.
Vanessa's put down, military, police, etc. end up in such situations regularly, as do what some call first responders.
Yeah. I mean, military police are the same thing. You're dealing with whatever's on the base, aren't you?
Yeah. And Southern Cross agrees with you. I can tell you without hesitation that bad apples are despised as well.
Yeah.
By other officers, which they are. Anyway, Gail, we've been going for nearly 54 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm going to close this down with your consent.
Yes.
And then we will think about, I think we'll carry on this topic next week. Law enforcement, gangs, criminal gangs or whatever, because we've had some interesting response here that we can discuss further.
Yeah.
So I thank you all for coming in and joining me and Gail this week, and thank you for all your chat. It's been very, very interesting, and we look forward to seeing you next week. So would you like to say, have you got an end comment to make?
No, I don't. I think next week we should do the sort of, I think we'll look at the Wayne Couzens case and have a conversation about that and see what people's views are. And I think that might be an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay then, and I'm going to say good night as Tony's
Good
put
night,
in
Paul.
there. So thank you once more, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Uh,